Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Fear. This is Mountaineer Locker Room. Very pleased to have with us tonight two terrific guests, Paul Freese and Dave Gorby. Mickey's off tonight, and Greg Christ hopefully will be with us later on. And there are going to be two parts to the show tonight, as always. We're going to do the then, and we're going to do the now. We're going to start with the now. Dave is going to be coming in and talking to us his take on how the football team is shaping up, particularly the portal, as it's the talk of the state, obviously, and beyond, in terms of what Rich Rod has done. Very quickly, when you think about someone coming into a job and then within 30 days having to hire a staff of 20 plus and be able to beat the, basically go all over the country to try to find the kind of talent that fits his style and complements the players that we have. It's an incredibly tall task, and he's doing a good job. The ranking services are giving really a thumbs up to the Mountaineers now. It's getting better week by week, and then we're going to bring in Paul Freese, who his resume takes about a page. A West Virginia native, West Virginia graduate, worked at WVU and in a variety of other locations. We'll talk more about Paul, but he is in the equipment management side of the game. So he has a chance to really get some tremendous insights from the locker room, so to speak. And we'll talk with Paul. He'll share with us, how he grew up, where he grew up, and his time at WVU as a student equipment manager, working for Don Nalen, and then what he's been doing since graduation. But let's bring Dave in. Dave, it's so good to see you again. We've worked together a number of times, and you're one of those persons who pays very, very, very strict attention. You really study what's going on both in not only football but also basketball, but primarily football. So really, really excited to get your perspective on how things are going. One of the things we said last week, Dave, is you can't look at this year as we've looked at last year and the year before that, because that was a continuation program. This is a rebuild. It's a complete rebuild. So we're really, I wouldn't say we're starting from scratch. That wouldn't be quite fair. But he's creating a team in his image, his style, what he wants to accomplish with his players. And the proof of the pudding, at least for the near term, will be how spring practices go, the spring game, and the choices he'll make going back into the portal when the second round starts. But so let me turn to you. Your thoughts about what you're seeing so far.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on the head that, it's crazy. I think me and you talked, it's probably been a little over a month now. And at that point, it was we only knew Rich Rod. I mean, we heard here and there of maybe a couple coaches he was going to bring, but nothing was official. And here we are. We're a little over a month since the bowl game, and he has a full staff, fully intact. That's been announced. That's official, and he has 30 transfer commits. I mean, that's pretty good work in just a month's time, especially for about a week that we were in dead period. That couldn't contact anybody. Then also you got to think about the 12 high school kids that's already came into school on early enrollees. So in second semester started. So that's a lot of work in a short amount of time so far.
One of the things that we talked about, Craig and I, a lot, and Mickey as well, is that when you looked at the Brown years and you look at what he did, and actually the rankings went up over time in terms of the freshman recruits, and also last year the portal. WVU did well in the portal, but it didn't translate to a consistent winning program. And one of the things we talked about was, and we talked about this, and we said it on the show more than once, the level of the coaching that was surrounding Brown. And that seems to be upgraded, from my perspective, significantly this time with that 20-person staff. And as we said last week, and I think a number of the viewers know this, that the new rule, I've talked about this, in the NCAA, we traditionally think about the position coaches plus the coordinators. But now, basically, it's you can expand that significantly with assistant to the assistant coaches.
Yeah.
And so altogether, I think it's about a 22-person, 23-person staff.
Yeah, I think we was a little bit used to like those titles you were saying, that assistant to assistant, and not that we don't have that right now, but I think you're gonna see that's kind of why you see like Jeff Castile is up there, and he's a main position coach. He's not assistant because you can have so many coaches nowadays, and that's a part of the part of the thing he's done. He wanted to put a staff together that he knows there's some good coaches that can go out there and X's and O's and can really develop kids. But then you also got a mix in there that are better recruiter type coaches, and he's certainly has done that. I feel like,
Brought that up because I don't think that gets emphasized enough. And that is that even though officially, if you look at, as I have at the WVU website, the athletic website, these coaches are called assistants to assistants. Their caliber, for the most part, is much higher than that. And so it's almost, you think about a position room with a variety of players. Now you almost have a coaching room, at least two in each of these rooms. Let's talk about the players, and Darren, if you could put up the first slide with 30 recruits that he's pulled in through the portal, and we'll talk about that because I'd like to get your take on certain players. I mean, when you look at this, and this is as of today, and it's coming from on3.com and also 247sports.com. When you look at, and Chris Anderson, I would give a shout out to Chris. When you look at that list, it covers a wide swath. I mean, we know that what you would expect Rich Rod to do is that he's going to bring in a lot of players, and then these players are going to have to prove themselves during spring drills, the spring game. Not all of these are going to necessarily be starters or even in the second tier. They may not even be with the team by the time that fall comes around, but they're certainly going to have their chance to prove themselves. And so, what players strike you that we might be seeing a lot of later in the year?
Well, let's not do it. Why don't we go to Frank? What position? Like, let's just X that. We'll go to the D-backs because we know that has been a sire spot, other than Beanie Bishop. That's been a tough spot the past few years, and like you said, he's brought in a number of players, and because he knows maybe a couple is not going to hit to be first stringers, so he's brought in what's he brought in? 1, 2, 3. He's brought in 9 D-backs, and just on the top of it, I would say, Fred Perry, he's a safety. He would be one of the main ones. Michael Coates was an all-conference player at Nevada. He was definitely someone. The one I kind of look at is the one that Rod West kind of jumped on early when Rod West wasn't official, but he was obviously talking to him, was the Devontae Golden Nelson from Akron. And the reason he was such a hot, I'm trying to think of the word, somebody that was very sought after was because of the film he put up against Ohio State, Uh, but I look for him to be a cornerback. But Rod West also brought somebody that's very familiar with him. He brought his main cornerback from App State with him, and that Jason Chambers kid. That seems like a good solid pickup. The first one out of the whole bunch is Jordan Scruggs from South Alabama, and I think he was like the slot corner. He was one of the better slot corners in the transfer portal. So, them just addressing that is going to be a key part. The defense.
The things we saw last year. I always tell folks, used to tell my students this: don't look at the one-off, look at the pattern, look to see if there's a pattern. And what you had last year, there really in the season there wasn't a pattern. We would play great. Sometimes we look like world beaters in one quarter and then do a flip in the next quarter. Either the other team would get out to really spank us, and then we turn around and spank them. But there was no consistency, and one of the biggest reasons was the defensive back. The backside was weak, even though we had some really good games. One of the questions that a lot of people are asking, obviously, is will Nico survive this? Now, obviously, we're all speculating here, but they brought in a fellow who has a good pedigree. Last place was Texas A&M. What do you and again, he's got to put together a team, and he's got to pick players that fit his program. And I think we know not only from the West Virginia experience, but we saw at Jack State. He has a preference for a good managing quarterback who can run and is not going to lose games. Let me ask this question, or ask the question in this way: do you think we knew that Nico fit the profile of a Neil Brown team? Does he fit the profile of a Rich Rod offensive scheme?
Well, that's a good question, and obviously Nico seems like he's up to the challenge. He wants to. He's stuck around. He's got to do spring ball, and but here, hey, Rich has to. He has to do his due diligence, or I can't say the word, but he has to take into account, because quarterback is the main part of college football nowadays. You just look at Howard for Ohio State. I mean, don't get me wrong, Henderson, Junkins, and then those receivers they have is so much talent, but Howard had to play his best game for him to do it. But and Rich, I mean, he's obviously added competition in that room, and with the Henderson kid, and then also the Max Brown kid coming in. Uh, um, you know, the thing about Nico is, man, if he had, he's mobile, but he just doesn't have that next gear. Like that's the only thing. But obviously it's got to be a good, uh, and another thing, you got to think about the Wilkins kid that was already on the team. He was a true freshman this past year, and Neil Brown always talked about him on the Monday or Thursday night scrimmages. Doing his thing. So it's going to be interesting how the whole quarterback room goes. Obviously, there's 5 in there right now. Scotty Fox was one of the early high school kids that came in early, so there's 5. And is there going to be 5 at the end of spring ball? I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think.
Things I enjoy doing, and I know a lot of our viewers do too, is basically to watch the weekly pressers of the head coach and then some of the position coaches.
Mhm.
That's always important during spring because it gives you a sense of what they're thinking about and who's excelling. But that's going to be especially important this year, because that way you'll get a sense before the spring game rolls around. Darren, would it be possible to put that graphic up a little bit so we can see it as a standalone? Because I want to point out one player and get Dave's response to it. If you could do that. There you go. A lot of people a lot of people are looking at the running back from Northern Iowa and basically saying, this is a guy that you've got to look at. I mean, a lot of people are saying that about Jalen Henderson in the left-hand column there, but you got Ty Edwards right next to him in the second from the left, 4 players down. And Mickey Plumlee went so far last week as to say that he believes that before too long, he'll be in the CJ mold. Now, Northern Iowa is not a power team. They're not even in the group of 5, but they're very competitive. It's a good program. He's very highly thought of. Have you heard anything, Dave, about any noise about Ty Edwards?
Well, here's the thing. We go back to the Rich Rod teams, and hey, it's just not like a one back type type deal, and obviously we already got Jaheim in the house, and that's a very good running back to start with. But losing CJ, you lose your big boy. So what does Rich do? He goes gets a big boy, and the thing is, CJ's pretty good, and if this guy maybe he's maybe just a half a step below CJ, but guess what? Nowadays he might be less expensive. You know what I'm saying on that part, um, and but just like I said, you go back to Rich Ross' team. First, it was Avon and Quincy, and then it turned into Quincy, KJ, and Jason Colson. And then, I mean, this was before everybody just thinks of Stephen Owen, and I get that, but it like Rich Rod's running backs hasn't always been a one man show. So you definitely gotta have a room of those type of guys. And then, just because of Ty Edwards, nobody's really talking about the LJ Turner kid from I came Catawba. I don't even Catawba. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a lower level but good program. It's interesting because you bring up the money issue, and Darren, if you could put that chart up there again so we can see it a little bit better. I want to point out some data that are on the chart, and it's in the far right column. We looked at this last week, and we've been following it. And if you watch a show last week, Mickey and I went back and forth a bit about this. I like to follow. There are a lot of ranking services for everything, and
mhm.
Portal too. But I like the best. The one that's considered the best is on 3.com, and you can see in 2025, Texas Tech is considered the number one
Yeah.
class. Now,
Mhm.
yeah, they are spending gobs of money in nil to remake that team in an upshift. Now, we said this last week. If you didn't watch the show, I'm going to repeat it because I think it bears repeating. Because when we think about rankings, we ordinarily think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're better than me. I'm better than you. Whatever. That's not the way on 3.com operates. What they do is they evaluate the players that are leaving the program, going elsewhere, and they
Mhm.
evaluate the players coming into the program, and then they basically do a minus. And teams that have improved from their point of view, bringing in better players than the ones they lost, they get a plus and a number. And if it goes the other way, it's a negative and a number. And as you might expect, with Rich Rod coming in after other schools had started, it took a while. West Virginia is now moving up those rankings, which essentially says this, that bottom line from on3.com is, are you improving your roster? That's really what they're asking. Or is your roster going to be going into the season with these transfers not as good as last year? And so, particularly with the players that Rich Rod and staff have added recently, the ranking is going up. So what I'm saying is, you can't compare Texas Tech with West Virginia straight out in terms of class against class. What
Mhm.
that ranking is from top to bottom, the schools that have improved their rosters the most, as on dot threes they have a proprietary software that they have. They're not going to tell you exactly how they do it. But Texas Tech is ranked #1 in terms of improving their roster year after year. West Virginia was in the bottom 5 for a while. Now it's moving up, and that's good to see. You see, it's number 56, and that's almost a 10 slot move in the last week. So that's good. What that's saying is, and the other thing I like about this, and then I'll stop, it's not based on numbers. Like if you bring in Marshall in one rating service is #1 because they had to bring in a lot of players. They lost players. That's why they didn't play in the bowl game. What these guys do, they don't care about numbers that much. Bringing in, they're looking at the quality out, the quality in, and then subtracting one from the other. So West Virginia is doing a lot better. Arizona is the bottom ranked portal class in the Big 12, and Texas Tech. And Texas Tech's not just #1 in the Big 12; they're #1 in the country.
Yeah, I think it isn't like we have like a bunch in the Big 12, like bunched up together right there, but Texas is definitely like leaps and bounds class wise is above everybody in the Big 12. I think maybe like Colorado's second or third or something like that.
You got to watch because Money Talks is TCU. Never,
Dallas. That's
oh, yeah. See, and the thing I like about this is that when you look at money in college sports, the private schools have an out. They don't have to report. So when we look at how much money is being spent in major college sports, you look at public schools. So in our conference, that means Baylor and TCU. You don't see their numbers, but in this domain portal, they report their numbers, so you get to see all 16 teams in the league, not just the public schools. So I always worry about the Texas schools, and particularly Baylor and TCU. Iowa State's doing well. Kansas State is in that group too. But it's good to see the WVU in this rating service is moving up. That's what we want to see. But at the end of the day, it's how these guys perform, how they're being evaluated by their coaches.
Right. You want to talk about offensive line?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we lost a good share of we lost one to the NFL. We're going to lose one to the NFL. And then the starting offensive line at Virginia Tech next year is going to be the West Virginia line. So please talk about the
that was obviously the next position I think everybody was worried about because of everybody that was leaving out of there. Like you said, we do have a guy probably going in the I'm going to say second round is what he's got to go, which is still pretty damn good. And then I think the guy beside of him is got to go in next year's draft. Not first or second round, but he's Remack. He's probably going to get drafted. But that offensive line is going to be a total rebuild. Everybody was kind of freaking out because at the start of us getting players and even the middle part, we really wasn't getting too many offensive linemen. But man, how we have kind of finished the winter period. I think these coaches have done a pretty good job. I mean, getting obviously, I think the big get. I think the one we absolutely had to have was Robbie Martin. I don't think we could have lost him to Marshall. And that's not saying anything bad on Marshall, but if we're the flagship school of the state, we can't be losing the best lineman in the class to them. And that's just being honest. Just being honest. And yes, he's from Huntington. And,
that's right.
And the key thing about him is he has multiple years left. Is he going to be ready this year? Well, we'll see. Maybe not, but I think he's up there. They are announcing tomorrow, like the official signees of the transfer class, and that means they'll be in school. They're already up in school, but that is happening tomorrow morning, I think, is what I read. But I think getting the two SEC kids, the kid from Arkansas, the Tykeus Crawford, that was a 4-star and
Yeah.
really hasn't played. He's played a few games, and even like this past year, he played 10 snaps in the first ball game, and then he redshirted. So but just getting a body like that is huge. The LSU kid, the chemo, I can't. How are we pronouncing that, Frank?
I can't help you. I mean, I can't even spell
all,
it.
I don't even know. But obviously, I think he feels like he's better on the offensive side because he was starting to play. He was starting defense, and to get him, that's another ready body to play. He's not a development guy. So, and then obviously the one yesterday, it seems like he's the one that, man, like people have been really excited about the Princeton kid, the
Oh
William
yeah,
Lee kid. Like, have you watched his film at all?
I did a bit,
Oh
and
my
I
gosh. I mean,
yeah
like, I
yeah
understand it's Ivy League, but man, that kid has just been, I mean, I get it. Highlight tapes are supposed to make you look good, but he is just running people over in those things. And the good thing, Princeton, he's not here yet because he wants to graduate from Princeton. Which, hey, if I was in the Ivy League, yeah, I understand. You
yeah
need to get that degree. That helps you later in life. But Princeton was a zone blocking team, which that's what we do. So he's going to be fine on schemes and all that.
yeah
So, but it seems like how we finished, we brought in guys that are kind of ready. I'm not gonna say are they going to be starters. I don't know, but their bodies seem like they can step in and play.
yeah yep.
Uh,
Well, it's going to be an interesting spring. Yeah,
mhm.
every once in a while
And-
I like. I was going to say every once in a while I like to watch the Ivy games that are on like CBS Sports Network, and they had a few Princeton games, and you can see, kids are making a choice. Even though, well, look at Army and Navy. Kids could play elsewhere, but they decide to go to schools like that and the Ivy League, and you can't simply say, nah, Ivy, that's just not comparable. So, but that's what's going to make this spring so interesting to see how these guys actually perform
yeah,
at this level.
well, that's another big thing. Well, just talking about the line, and like I said, he's not going to be here. Like I said, he's going to
Yeah,
finish his school at Princeton, and that makes sense. And the good thing is, right now he's definitely a 1-year kid. And I think I was reading like in 22 he got hurt and he didn't play. He only played like a few ball games, so he might be a 2-year guy, which would
yeah,
be
that would
good.
be
But
great.
I think we're only going to have like 12 bodies for the spring ball on offensive line, which that would be a little tough, but
Yeah,
it might help a couple of those young
yeah,
kids grow up a little bit.
yeah. Dave,
So
this has been great. We're going to have to move on. We've got Paul who's taking all this in, taking notes,
mhm.
and then he's going to call Rich Rod later on tonight and give him give him his thoughts, right, Paul?
Mhm.
But any final comments about what you've seen so far? And I agree. There's some exciting pickups, and you would think that you turn the spigot on, and then after a while it would start to dry up. But some of the best, let's put it this way, some of the players that bear watching in the spring have come later, not just earlier. Even though some of the ones that came earlier, like the running back and like the quarterback, but still, some of these newer gets really bear watching. Any final comments?
You talking to me or Paul?
Yeah, no, you. Yeah, yeah,
Like I said, obviously we didn't mention him, the Robinson kid being a defensive player of of a conference. That's obviously a huge get. It's going to be interesting what type of defense Allie is going to do. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be 3-3-5. It looks like if you bring in those two edge guys, man, we might be able to run a 4-2-5 a little bit. So that's definitely going to be something interesting to watch. I see you put up that 105 number. Now, just to like I said, hey, don't bank, like we will know the roster when it's August, right? So the 105 number, you know, is it's not official, but it's like when it's official, it's supposed to start next academic year. So we have you put 96. Anyways, it's worked out. Like, so not all the high school kids are there right now. Like I said, 12 came in. Will Reed's not there, so you count 29 portal kids, and that number hits right at 85 right now. Just to let you know on that. But yeah, so it's definitely going to be interesting how spring works out. But like I said, we know in today's game, people's going to leave after the spring, and then we're going to pick up a few more after that. So, and Rick,
Pointed out a couple weeks
Frank,
ago. Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
Frank, and one thing I wanted to add that I'm excited about is really the mixture of youth and experience on his coaching staff
Yeah.
with the
yes,
Chris
yeah,
Herring, Jeff Castile, Jack
That's great.
Bignell, and having these young, hungry kids working with these guys daily. I really like what he's built, what I see they're building. I think it's going to be really good for the program.
Yep, yep, yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I wanted to say that the point that Dave, 2 points that Dave made. One is that if you looked at what Indiana did last year, what they did is they went out in the second portal and got, after they watched the spring game and the spring drills, guys that supplemented the guys they brought in. They brought in a lot of guys from James Madison. And the other thing that you mentioned, that 105 figure, is sort of the max out of the NCAA. And Chris Anderson at 24/7 Sports follows this very carefully and adds together the freshmen coming in, the transfers coming in, and the guys that didn't transfer out. And you're right, we're between about 85 and 96. But at the end of the day, you know, that's just something to follow. Dave, thanks so much for being here. We're going to have you back again.
you have me, Frank.
Boy, too bad that Greg couldn't be here. I hope he's going to be here.
I know. I miss that guy. I'm telling you, I miss him.
He's dear to our hearts, and that includes Darren McGovern, our producer. But yeah, hopefully he'll be with us later tonight, and if not tonight, the next time. But you take care. We'll catch you down the road, Dave.
All right, we'll see you guys.
It is an absolute delight to have you here. You and I have just getting to know each other. We had a couple talks on the phone, and I'm laughing because, you know, people feed me information about our guests, and I don't know all the guests before I meet them, but they pretty much lined up. They said, "This is Paul. This is what to expect," and he tells great stories, has great experience, and my God. In fact, if you have a chance, Darren, if you can throw up the other graphic that I gave you with back in the day for Paul. Actually, it's back in one picture is way back in the day when you were at West Virginia. There he is in the upper right-hand corner. There you are as a student equipment manager. I don't know who you're standing next to. That guy looks familiar. No, there, Coach Don. And then you are with Don again at the bottom left some years later. And then in the middle, you're there with Bo Orlando. I think that photo was taken in Cincinnati. These photos are all courtesy of our good friend Mark Parsons. You know Mark, and you're a good friend.
Yep.
And we're going to have Bo on just talk with Bo today. He's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. We're looking forward to that. But
nice.
Good looking guy back then. Still good looking.
Yeah. That was 1996 at Riverfront Stadium when Bo was with the Bengals.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. A lot of people need to remember that Bo's not only in the WVU Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame, played for I think 3 pro teams, had a good pro career. Just a great player. But let me just run down the background of Paul Frees, and it's amazing. You're born and bred in West Virginia in Brooke County. God bless you for that. Got both your bachelor's and master's in sports management from Morgantown. God bless you for that. You were the student manager for football from 84 to 88. So you got a chance to really experience some great players, great coaches and great times during those years, for Pete's sake. And then you became equipment manager for NFL Europe, for the Frankfurt Galaxy and the London Monarchs. And Oliver Luck was instrumental in your getting that job. We know Oliver Luck, obviously. You were the equipment assistant manager for the Atlanta Falcons. You were director of league equipment for NFL Europe, senior managers for sports marketing for Under Armour, and you lived in Amsterdam for a while you were in NFL Europe and working for Under Armour. You're currently the head equipment manager for the Memphis Showboats of the UFL, United Football League. In fact, you're going to be leaving for that assignment pretty soon. And your real claim to fame is that you live in Plumboro, Pennsylvania, the home of Pat McAfee. And you told me that you actually saw his first high school game. Now, that's a true story, right?
That is a true story. He didn't play football till his senior year, and my nephew was on the team. So it went to his first high school football game, and he kicked the opening kickoff, and it went through the uprights. And I looked at my brother-in-law, who I think is listening to this podcast right now, and said to him, "This kid's going to play on Sundays." After seeing one kick, I said that because I'd been around the game and I'd never seen a ball come off a leg like that. And I was right on that, but I also made sure that I contacted Rich at least 3 or 4 times to say, you need to get up here and look at this kid before someone else does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. There's no question. Yeah, he's quite a talent, and he's making a mark, obviously, in sports media, too. Talk first about why'd you pick, well, you're a native, but just because you're a native doesn't mean you're going to WVU. Why'd you pick WVU, and talk a bit about your experience, not just as equipment manager, student equipment manager, but also, academically, what it was like going to school.
Yeah, I was always going to go to West Virginia, being an in-state kid. And wanted to be lucky enough that when I applied to go there, I also sent a letter to the head equipment manager at the time, Mike Karen, and had a good friend whose dad was a contributor at the university, helped me, and I was able to get on as a student manager with the football team, which really sealed the deal and made for a great 5 years as an undergrad at the university. But there was just no doubt I was going to West Virginia.
Yeah. And from what we've talked, and you and I have talked, it was a great experience for you too. Not only in terms of all the practical experience you got, but also the academic skills and the practical skills you learned, and the networking. Because obviously, you took advantage of that networking.
Yeah, the network. I mean, is unbelievable. Just when I was leaving the university, when I got the job with NFL Europe, Oliver Luck had called back to John Spiker, who at the time was an athletic trainer, a longtime athletic trainer with the sports teams at West Virginia. And Oliver was looking for an equipment manager and athletic trainer for his team in Frankfurt at the time. And Spike had recommended myself and a trainer, and we went over, and both of our careers took off from there. Tom Colt was the trainer that went over with me, and he ended up being in the NFL for a lot of years as an athletic trainer as well.
That's so important, is that, people who maybe aren't familiar with university life think it's just the classroom, but they've done studies of the value and merit of college. And one of them is the networking and the opportunity to meet people, and then those connections pay off later in life. When you think about those 4 years, 84 to 88, which historically were obviously, I don't care how long West Virginia plays football, those 4 years are going to stand out. When you think about that 84 season with those huge back-to-back wins against Boston College and then Penn State, beating Penn State for the first time since the 50s. And you go all the way to, my God, the national championship game that probably, I still believe, and many do, would have been West Virginia's if Major hadn't gone down in the first quarter. What are some of the games, experiences, people, you name it, that stick out now these many years later?
Yeah, I think, and Coach Nealon actually talks about this, that 88 team, there were 25 seniors that I believe were 50-year seniors because of the red shirt of their first year, and then played for 4 years together. That team was so close. they spent so much time together, which obviously is a huge difference from how programs are being built now. So just being with those guys for 5 years, you really built relationships and became close.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have a chance to go to the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah,
Were you
I was a senior student manager. I carried Coach Nealon's cords that day on the sidelines.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, I was that year I was next to him. I had a front row seat for every game and got to hear every play
Oh my
call.
God. What was that of all the situations and circumstances you've been in professionally over your lifetime, where does that stack up?
Oh,
Being
I mean,
there,
it's
wow.
that season is just incredible. That's undefeated is hard to do in any league.
That's
Even in
right.
when I was in NFL Europe, there were 6 teams and you played 10 games,
Yeah,
and no one would go undefeated. You'd go
yeah,
8-2, 9-1. It's just hard in any sport to have an undefeated season,
yeah,
and you appreciate that more the more you're in it and you pay
yeah.
attention.
And you know the when we think about what's the best way to describe it, a Mountaineer football team, and you think about the teams of that era, and then you think about the teams that were in Rich Rod's first era, and I remember I used to talk with Dale Wolfley about this all the time. Of course, he was a member
Yeah,
of that late '80s Mountaineer team. Tough, rough, and the thing that Dale would always say, even if we didn't win the game, the other team knew that they had played a hell of a team and they were going to feel it the next day or the next couple of days. And, I think clearly that's what's in the hearts and minds of people right now. Not that we haven't been that way recently, but it's that consistent toughness, blue collar, West Virginia, give it your all, that kind of team. Just you were so lucky to be part of that because that clearly was a defining factor for that era team.
absolutely. And so my freshman year in '84, Rich was a senior and had an interception in that big win against Penn State, as everyone knows. So he comes from that culture was built and he came back and did it as a coach, and I'm happy to see him back again because we definitely need to get back to that kind of football and that kind of mentality, that, as he's now saying, hard edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Talk a bit about your experience in NFL Europe. That to me is even if you weren't a college professional football fan, I was fascinated by the fact that there was a league in Europe, and the NFL had not just playing games over there, but had a team that had a set of teams under the auspices of the National Football League, and I would watch those games. They were interesting. It was good quality football. How many years were you involved in that?
I was with the league in different capacities for 11 seasons, and it was around for around 17, 18 seasons. So it
Wow.
had quite a good lifespan for a spring league. Um, the big thing too is the NFL owned the league. The NFL also sent players to the league, so you had players that were maybe on the practice squad or had been cut the previous year. They wanted to bring back the camp to get playing time. Brad Johnson was a quarterback for the Buccaneers when they won the Super Bowl. He played on the team I was with over there. Jake Delhomme started the Super Bowl for the Carolina Panthers. He was on a team I worked with. Kurt Warner wasn't on a team I was with, but he was over there. So they were sending quality guys to get game time to make the next level, and it benefited the players and the league.
Yeah, and reasonable attendance too. Your recollections of how do the Europeans respond to, they call
Drew,
football our soccer,
yeah,
American
yeah,
football.
that's it. American football. The league drew really well in Germany. Like when I was in Frankfurt, we'd have 35, 40,000 a game. Dusseldorf, the Rhine Fire was the same. In London, we didn't draw very well at the time. And now the regular season NFL games obviously sell out all the time. But in Germany, it was big.
Yeah, yeah, you could see that, and not only in terms of numbers, but the noise, the level of
Yeah.
engagement. Do you think we're going to see NFL teams in Europe permanently? Not a league. I'm talking about divisional members of the NFL Do you think that will happen? And if so, when?
I, I think it's still a ways down the road, just because of having a team over there for a full year, and there's more than just the game. Then you're getting into moving families, you're getting into taxes, you're getting into immigration. There is a lot that would need to be done to put a team over there full time. I know the NFL talks about it all the time. I'm skeptical whether how that it will happen in the near future.
Yeah, yeah, it may well be. We'll see it with the NBA before we see
Yeah.
it with the NFL. The scale is different, obviously,
Yes,
when you
much.
think of
Yep.
football. Yeah, yeah. And then you came and you worked with the Atlanta Falcons as an equipment manager,
Yeah.
and talk about that experience.
Yeah, I did one season with them, which was a great opportunity. I wanted at least to get a chance to work at the NFL at some point, and had the opportunity to do that before I went back to NFL Europe and was the director of equipment for the league. It just like there's always a West Virginia connection. I was writing some of this stuff down before we talked. Daryl Talley was actually playing for the Falcons at the end of his career when I was there. So there was a player from West Virginia, and also in the front office was Ken Herrick, who played for the Mountaineers, I believe, in the '60s. He was a
Wow,
personnel director.
wow.
So it's just everywhere you go, there seems to be someone from West Virginia that you're around.
Yeah, wow. I certainly want to talk with you about the current role because the appetite for football doesn't end with the Super Bowl, and now we've got the United Football League that seems to have some staying power with the combination of the two prior leagues. While leagues, that's why it's called United. And you're working with the Memphis team. Uh,
Yes.
Describe. Um, I don't want to say how it feels to you because I want you to talk about your experiences, but I also want you to look at it from an analyst perspective about your thoughts, and maybe that's the place to start in terms of your thoughts about the United Football League, its sustainability, whether or not you think it will continue to attract fans. Um, just your thought about this next iteration of spring football.
I think it has a good chance to succeed. There's a good ownership group in place for the league. Uh, the ratings on television last season across Fox and ESPN, I know the league was very happy with. I think if you look it up, the games averaged about 1 million viewers per game for a spring football league. That's pretty good. And with the teams coming back this year, all in the same cities that they were last year, it's the hope is to build a little bit of groundswell in those cities and continue to grow the league. So I'm actually pretty optimistic about the growth of this league. The players are good, the coaches are good. Ken Wisenhunt is going to be the head coach of my team this year, the Memphis
Sure.
Showboats, who comes with a lot of NFL experience, and that's across the league. That there's a lot of NFL experience, and once again, hoping to develop the players and give them more opportunities was really what it's all about from the
Great.
football side.
Yeah, it might be good for those watching, just for if you could say a few words about exactly what an equipment manager does, what your daily routine is like as it leads to game day, and the size of your staff, what they do. Because my guess is, just looking at it from afar, it's detailed, it's complex, and it has things have to be done really well and really now, and you've got to be able to be planful. So to me, it takes a really disciplined person to be able to be successful in the job you have.
Yeah, you have to be organized. Organization is the key. You got my staff. The staff for this league is actually really small. There's only two of us, and we have 50 players in season. After we make our cuts, we'll have 50 man squad. We have nine and only 9 coaches, so it's not that big of a staff, which it's manageable. But you're there every day before the players get there, and you're there after they leave. You're the first person in the building and the last one to leave, pretty much, and just making sure that the players and the staff have everything they need to have a successful week, a successful practice, and then on game day not have to worry about anything but playing the game. Have everything ready, so they're just worried about playing the game.
Yeah, when you think about all the parts that need to be in place and connect well
Yeah,
to do what you guys do, people, I look at football, college pro football. It's a corporation, man. You got a CEO, you've got middle level managers, you've got specialists in various roles. They got to do their job. They have to do their job well. They have to relate
yeah,
to each other. They have to be connected to the players. The players have to have respect for them. Otherwise,
yeah,
you just think about the play on the field. Hey, a lot of work goes in for that play to happen, and a lot of things happen after that play to get ready for the next round. And you've done it for so many years now. It's amazing, but you have such a hey. There's a book here, Paul. You got to write a book when you're done. The life of an equipment manager, because I think a lot of people are fascinated with the job. And I'll say this: you're another example, and Greg and I talk about this all the time. Mickey too. Another example of the great alums we have at West Virginia University who took full advantage of their education and have just prospered professionally and personally in the years following their time in Morgantown. So I take my hat off to you on that, and we really
yeah.
really appreciate your spending time with us. You made a few comments earlier about the football season coming up, and I want to give you another chance to expand on that, on your thoughts about. I know you said you were really appreciative of Rich coming back and being at the helm, and your thoughts about your hopes and aspirations for Mountaineer football 2025 and beyond.
I'm really, like I said earlier, I'm really excited about Rich being back, and just expecting us to play hard, and which I know we will, and bring some excitement back to Mountaineer football. I think the stadium is going to be electric, and it's just I think it's going to be a fun season. I mean, I think everybody's going to be excited about this and
Mm.
getting back to seeing Rich Rod football.
Yeah, and I'm with you, and we need it. It's it's important. I'm not a native West Virginia. I came like Dale Wolfley. I came from Western New York. My wife and I, Kathy, fell in love with West Virginia. Came down and got our graduate's degrees, and a big part of our time, even as graduate students, were those football Saturdays over in Old Mountaineer Field when we
Yeah.
went with Bobby Bowden, Jim Carlin were head coaches going way back, and
Yes.
that never leaves you. And no program. Look at I don't care what program. There's always the ups and downs, but and you try to get past the downs, and you want those ups, and they're you never forget them. I mean, you never forget them. They have an impact. You can remember what you were doing, where you were for those big games. You can remember those moments
Yeah.
at the stadium, and everything that.
I, I,
Go ahead. Everything
I
went.
could
Please.
I want to tell you an interesting story before we go. With this past season, with the in the UFL, one of the assistant coaches on our staff was Paul Pasqualoni, the longtime head
Oh,
coach of Syracuse,
sure.
and we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 1987 and 88 West Virginia Syracuse games.
Oh,
87 we lost on a 2-point conversion in the Carrier Dome that allowed them to finish 11-0. The next year we beat them in Morgantown pretty handily for us to finish 11-0. But those were two games that I'll never forget. One for losing and one for winning. That were both spectacular games with spectacular atmosphere. And also, the starting fullback on that Syracuse team was Daryl Moose Johnston, who played for the Cowboys, who was basically the commissioner of the UFL. And him and I discussed those games, and
oh,
he could remember the details. He could remember of that 2-point conversion. He said I was lined up at he was lined up at fullback. They ran to the left, and he said when he lined up, that he said there's no way we're going to score here, and somehow the guy got in the corner of the end zone. And they beat us by a point. But
yeah.
it's crazy when you start talking to people the details that they can remember about games that were played 35, 40 years ago.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was talking with someone the other day about this. I hope that what happened 30 years ago is going to happen again. I grew up in
Absolutely.
I was born in Syracuse,
Yeah.
and I grew up on Syracuse, Pitt, Penn State, West Virginia playing each other. Not so much Virginia Tech up in New York, but those teams. Boston College would be another. And
Yeah.
like so many people, I miss those regional rivalries. Obviously, Pitt, we still play Pitt, but obviously the Syracuse West Virginia rivalry is very near and dear to my heart. First football game I ever saw was in the old Archbold Stadium, and Jimmy Brown was playing, and I don't know, he had something like 300 yards against Colgate. In that stadium, the old Archbold Stadium back in the day didn't even have, they
Yeah.
had concrete seats for Pete's sake. It was, and I miss that. I mean, I really miss that. I think of the great games with Syracuse, and so yeah, here you are talking with guys about it 40 years later, and it's still right there, and it's what
Yeah.
college football is all about.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
what it is all about.
you're
Creating
right.
memories.
That's right. This has been a delight, Paul, getting to know you a bit more. I'm glad our audience has had this opportunity. Any final comments before we say goodbye?
Just thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And let's go Mountaineers.
Yeah, and if it weren't for Mark Parsons, Paul wouldn't be here. Mark is just, he is an assistant producer on this show, does a great job of networking. We talked of the importance about that before, and it's because of Mark that we got Paul, and we hope you'll
Yep.
come back at some time in the future because I know you've got so many more stories to share.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. Take care, Paul.
Bye.
Well, I've got some bad news. Just got a text from Greg Christ. He is not going to be able to join us tonight, and for that, I'm quite sad. I know Darren in the control feels the same way. Um, Greg is near and dear to our heart, and he is still recovering from a serious health situation, and so we hope we'll have Greg with us next week. This would be the time of the show, and I'm going to be brief with it, where we would talk about WVU basketball. We're still going to talk about it, but Greg, is the coach, Chris, is obviously much more educated. But all of us got excited, obviously, with that great win over Iowa State, the number 2 team in the country, with the West family there. It was a great game to watch. Talk about football grit. There was basketball grit. Team played together very well. It's amazing to me what Coach DeVries has been able to do to bring in a team, basically, it is an entirely new team. And now with his son, a major player, not being able to play because of the shoulder injury. And it's a lead in for saying that if you watch the game last night against Arizona State, I thought it was going to be a snap. They came in 1-5 in the league, Arizona State. Uh, they don't play the kind of disciplined game that the Mountaineers do, but we just didn't have a good night, and it's awfully tough when you come off the high of that game over the weekend against the Cyclones, get ranked again, and then have to turn around very little time to be able to face really a very talented Arizona State team. And so we got to stick with these Mountaineers. I don't think anybody thought they would be as good as they are. We thought they would be good, but to beat 3 top 10 teams so far this year, that's just phenomenal. We got another chance because after they play Kansas State on the weekend, the next home game is against Houston. And, why not? The game against Houston down there had its moments, but in the end, they were just had a little bit too much, particularly playing in the home turf of Houston. But it may happen next week, and we'll keep our fingers crossed because we want to stick with this team, and we don't want to do anything other than wish them the best and support them fully. And talking about basketball, the women's team, if you haven't watched them, I really encourage you to. Mark Kellogg is a terrific coach. Greg and I had a chance to meet him earlier, well, not earlier this year, but last year. And we had a good long talk with him. You can tell he's really solid. A great team that plays well together. They're playing tonight, actually, against Arizona State on ESPN Plus, and that game is going to tip in about 25 minutes. And we encourage you to continue to support the women. They're also highly ranked, and they're making noise in a very, very tough, as like the men are, very tough conference for women's basketball. And we all remember that game against Iowa last year at Iowa, where I really thought they had a chance to win that game. And I think if it weren't for some iffy calls, might have knocked off those mighty Hawkeyes. So they're going to be a force during the regular season. They're going to make a difference in the tournament, both the Big 12 tournament and then we hope in the NCAA. Great team, great talent, great coach. Darren, if you would put up the graphic for our guests next week, we'll go over that, and then I'll bid you adieu. As I said earlier, Mickey is off tonight. His daughter is celebrating her birthday, and so he's taking her out to dinner. And I mentioned that Greg is not available to. Okay, sure. And so we hope that Greg will be with us next week. And actually, as an aside, Mickey just moved from Atlanta to West Virginia. And he's living in southern West Virginia, and he's in his car traveling south. And I'm coming to you from Florida. We live in Florida during the winter, and he's going to be in my home next week. And so he's going to be in one room. I'm going to be in another room. We're going to be doing the show together. And so we look forward to that. So anyway, let me do the intro, and hopefully there it is. We're very, very pleased to have Jed Drenning. You know Jed Drenning. You know him very well because he's the great sideline reporter for football and also co-host of In the Gun podcast. We certainly encourage you to watch that show. A number of you do. Some of you may not know. There's a picture of Jed on the left-hand side. I really didn't realize this, that Jed was one hell of a high school and college football player. In fact, he was all conference. He's in the Glenville Hall of Fame. And he was, I think, 10,000 yards, I think, through his career, passing for Glenville. And the thing that's amazing, and when we were talking the other day, he was also on the West Virginia, I think 1989 or 1990. So he was quarterback at West Virginia, backup quarterback. So he was he played for the West Virginia staff. Then he was also Rich Rod was the coach at Glenville when he played. So Jed has experience with Rich Rod as a player, but not at West Virginia when Rich Rod was at Glenville. And then he went to Samford, Samford, the school in Alabama that Bobby Bowden graduated from. And he played under Bobby's son at Terry Bowden at Samford. So, and also he played under Jimbo Fisher. So the thing that's crazy about Jed, when you think of all those great names of coaches, you know, Rich Rod, Don Nealon, you name it, and there he is. He was a great football player, and he's taken that experience to what he's doing now in sports media. And let me just say this: the interview that we're going to have with Jed next week, for me, was one of the most instructive 30 minutes I've ever had in football. What he's going to do next week is talk about the history of how major college football got to where we are today. He describes where we are today, and then he projects where we're going forward. And I don't want to give it all away, but one of the thing he emphasizes, without giving too much of it away, he said, we're all in this nil era, right? Certainly. That's about to end in terms of what I would call nil 1.0, because next year we're going into revenue sharing. And you're going to want to pay special attention to what Jed Drenning has to say about revenue sharing and the impact it's going to have on major college football, including the possibilities for WVU football, which obviously is our center of gravity. And he'll also talk about his experiences with Rich Rod. So we hope you can join us next week at 7 o'clock. And we're delighted to be really the first show that we've done through the New River Network, and Darren McGovern. Darren does a great job, and he's in our control room. And we're going to see you next week, either on this network or through the Voice of College Football, as we do every week. This is Frank Fear saying goodnight for Mickey Plumley and Greg Chris and our guests tonight. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday night. Take care, everyone.